Hello, my friends, and welcome once again to Kardec Radio. This is Spiritism, a closer look. And so that you know, we are here every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Luiz Lima. I'm your host for tonight. I have a guest. But before that, if you have any comments, any suggestions, any topics you want to hear about, you can just contact us. You have the information down on your screen. You can use kardecradio.com, our Facebook page, or the email address that you see down on the bottom of your screen. Well, tonight we have a topic that for me it's something really long but very necessary. Tonight we are going to talk about reconciliation. And as I said, as I promised, we have a guest tonight. It's a recurring guest. He's becoming one of our recurring guests. Here it is, Mackenzie Melo. Mackenzie, how are you?
I'm doing well, Louise. How are you? I think,
Good.
thank you. Thank you for inviting me once again. Here we are back again to delve a little bit into one of these topics that are very dear to our hearts and very necessary, not only to those who are listening, but especially for ourselves. It is very um, it touched me, the topic for tonight a while ago, and it still resonates with me. So we decided that let's talk a little bit about it. So thank you for inviting me again.
And it touches me too. Reconciliation is one of these things that we need to kind of concentrate, all of us, not you and me, all of us, humanity in general. We kind of don't pay attention to that. We don't maybe grasp the importance and the relevance of talking about it. So let's get started.
Yeah.
Reconciliation.
Yeah, let's get started. Yeah, so this topic is really interesting because Kardec dedicates an item or two items in the Gospel according to Spiritism. That's chapter 10 when he talks about the enemies or the adversaries. And there's items 5 and 6 of that chapter. He says reconciliation with your adversaries, and it starts like, to me, and then Kardec does something that he grabs two verses from the Bible, especially and most importantly from the Sermon on the Mount, which is located in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, which is a compendium of ethical behavior. So he asks us to think about a lot of our behaviors towards ourselves, towards the others, towards the world. So it is a very, very important part of the New Testament and of Jesus's teachings. In this part, it's only two verses, but and of course, like we always say, there is no time to talk about every little detail, but we're going to try to cover at least a few very important, two or three very important topics, in my personal view, of what Jesus says in this, and with what Kardec mentions and makes comments in the Gospel according to Spiritism. So it is very sane that Kardec names this reconcile with your adversaries. And I have, for this, I have to read at least a little bit of the verses. I'm not going to read a lot, but two verses, they're not very long. So, and there are different translations of the Bible too, which also come are very interesting, the way people translate these verses, because it adds up a lot in what they wanted to say or Jesus wanted to say. But this translation from the New International Version, which is, I'd say, the one of the latest translations and one of the most current ones, he says, they say, settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. So imagine Jesus talking about this, right? He's taking you to court. And then we can, of course, stop here and start thinking about what is this court that he's talking about. And we can just maybe be very specific. Oh, it's just that person who is really bringing me to court. And We'll not have a lot of adversaries like that in life. At least I don't, and hopefully not a lot of us have people taking us to court.
Mhm.
But it is very interesting to say. And then what is this court that Jesus is talking about, right? What is it just like a judge? Because he's going to mention the judge. And then he says, do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge. So here he comes and with the judge. And then he says, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, and then he finishes it up, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Penny here is also another word that's very interesting. In another translations, in older translations, they translated this word penny as a farthing. And a farthing, when you go and research and look for it, a farthing actually is like a quarter of a penny. So, so if you owe a penny, it's
Maybe.
already like low enough, right? But if you
Yeah,
owe a farthing, well, a quarter of a penny,
it's even less.
it's even less. But then he says you will have to get out, or you will only get out if you pay until the last farthing.
Yeah.
If you owe a quarter of a penny, they will charge you. Until you pay it, you will never get out. So Jesus here is not being very easy, I'd say, on us. He says, okay, maybe you should think about it before you go to the judge, because this judge is very, very severe.
Mhm.
Which made me think about, because when we talk about Jesus, and we say that he is talking about a judge, we tend to think that the judge is God. But is it? And that's where my first my one of the I think the main reflections of this verse, or this teaching, is who is this judge that's so severe? And I remember and you were much better than me on this, Luis, of remembering stuff from the Spirit's book. um, but where are God's laws? And I don't remember the number of the question. Where are God's laws inscribed? Right? Where can we
Mhm.
find God's laws? And I can't remember the number of the question number. Do you know?
621. 621.
621 on the Spirit's book. And the answer is from the good spirits there. They're in your conscience.
Conscience. Yeah.
Okay, so who is the judge really?
Yeah.
who, who is really the judge? So it it is funny how we want sometimes to blame others. Oh, funny, but it's not funny. How we want to blame others for stuff that happened to us. And what Jesus is actually, at least for me, and on this
Mhm.
uh, interpretation that I feel free to make, is he's actually referring to a different judge. He's not referring to God. He's not referring to this universal power that's all judgeful and resentful of what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. No, it's ourselves. I'd say that
Ourselves.
when we get um, a little more conscience, when we get a little more not only knowledge, but we get a little more feeling, we get a little more love, and we have a little more not only knowledge, but we are um, what's the word that I want to use? What Socrates said, and we talked about it last time I was here. When you're a sage, right? When you're more like not only knowledgeable about it, but you're more, you really understand what it is, and then you will end up saying, I the only thing that I know is that I don't know yet. That I'm
Like
still
wisdom, right?
wisdom. Yeah, that's the word that I was looking for. Yeah.
Mhm.
So when we are more, wise in that sense, we will look at the things that we did and that we do, and we will be so picky with ourselves, and we will say, why are you doing this? You have to remake this. You have to make this in a different way. You have to
Yeah.
treat this, so this judge that Jesus is talking about, let's get God out of the picture, at least for a little while, and let's look at ourselves.
Mhm.
Especially because also Jesus later on will say that we are also gods. So if we even if we go that pathway, right, we will be the gods of ourselves in that sense of,
Right.
okay, you are, your own owner. You owe all to yourself, all the bad things and good things. You have help, you have people coming from the outside trying to make you do things. However, if you do it, it's your responsibility. It doesn't matter if it's a good thing or a bad thing. If you do it, it's your responsibility with the help of others or not, but it's my responsibility. So in that sense, we can really, and to me, clearly see that Jesus is not only talking about exterior forces, he's
Mhm.
mainly talking about my inner force, and that's one aspect of this. But there are more aspects. I know that you want to say something, Luis, or ask something.
No, I was just thinking. You said we are gods in the sense exactly that we have the power to be a judge, but not to judge others,
Oh,
to judge ourselves. But we have that power, the inner power, and that judgment, you and yourself. That is the what a lot of people call the inner dialogue. It's
yes.
us, facing ourselves from
Mm.
outside the box. One is inside the box, the other is outside the box, and that brings a lot of conflict most of the times. But that's exactly what needs to be done to reconcile.
That's
It's you reconciling with yourself, or us reconciling with ourselves.
exactly. And then I'm going to bring the other things. Since you brought this on, I'm going to talk about, um, reflect with the title that Kardec uses, and of course that's based on what Jesus says. He says, it's reconciliation with your adversaries,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you just said that it's with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to think about, what is this adversary, right? Of course that we have issues with other people, and we have to deal with that as well. However, for me to be able to deal with the other person, if I'm not able to really perceive, notice that I am my own worst enemy,
Right.
how am I going to be able to really reconcile with someone else?
Yeah, we are great underminers.
Exactly. We like excavate the basis of where we are walking,
Yeah.
and then we fall. And
Mm-hmm.
then how am I? So it is that, I mean, one of the things that I like a lot about the way Spiritism brings stuff to us, and if we really want to focus on that, is that Spiritism is not for the others. We are here talking because we like, it's part of who we are to talk about stuff, and hopefully there's people there, there have the same interests as us, and then come and think about, and use what we say, either to think more, or either to reflect upon and to improve their lives. However, what I like about Spiritism is that we have the we understand that the message is not for the others. The message is for me who read,
Yeah.
right? So when I'm reading settle matters quickly with your adversary, I should not be worried about the adversary. If I'm not talking about myself as the adversary, if I'm talking about someone who I have a problem with, I'm not talking about the other person. I'm not talking about the adversary. I'm talking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the message is settle matters. So you are the one who needs to go and do something.
Take the initiative.
Yeah, take the initiative. Exactly. And there are different translations of the Bible who actually, which is very interesting to me when I was reading, and then I, for whatever reason, decided, oh, let me get this other translation here. I did this study first in Portuguese, but there are like more translations in English than there are in Portuguese.
Right.
So you can find a lot of differences too. But there are some translations that where they actually, in Portuguese, they actually use the verb go and do it. They don't use like, just like a passive voice. No, they say go and do it. be good to those adversaries. Do good to those adversaries. They ask us to move towards it.
Right.
And what is interesting in Jesus's message is that, you see, I'm going to read it again, and that's when I read this a few times, and I this clicked in my head. I said, "Oh my God, Jesus, he is um, he pulls us up, or he wants us to climb so high, and we don't perceive this." So he says, I'm going to read it again. Settle matters quickly. First, he says quickly, which is
Mhm.
something else that we could go into,
Yeah.
but I'm not going into. We don't have time for that. Um, with your adversary who is taking you to court. He doesn't say that the adversary is right, is wrong. If you are right, if you are wrong, if you are in the wrong or not, maybe you're in the right, and the other one is doing the wrong. And he says it doesn't
It
say that
doesn't
it
matter.
matters. It doesn't matter. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what Jesus is saying. He's not worried about the if it's correct or what the other one is doing or not.
And he's not taking sides either.
Yeah, exactly. He says, go and do your part
Yeah.
and solve the problem as quick as you can. Quickly, he says, as quick as you can.
Yeah.
And so that makes us. And last time I talked about this. Um, this is a personal account of what happened. It's going to be quick. So after I finished talking about it, right, some people came to me, some people that I knew. It was not in the Spiritist Center that I go to, it was in a different Spiritist Center, but I knew some of the people and they came to me. And after I talked about it, about reconciliation and going and trying to do something uh, to solve the problem, even if the other one is the one that's in the mistake or in the wrong, people came to me, and some two people came to me, hugged me after the end, after everything is done, or talking to a lot of people, and they start crying because I don't know why I didn't ask, and it's not my place to ask, but I got emotional too
Yeah.
because this is a message that where Jesus is inviting us to really love. It's not a message of, oh, you're in a fault and you're going to have to come here and apologize to me. That's not what Jesus is saying. He says the other way around. It doesn't matter if the other person is wrong. Our task is to be together, is to walk together. And he tells us why. Because the other person, be it wrong or not, the other person might be sick,
Yeah.
and then the other person will bring you down. So your task, our task, what Jesus is asking us is to raise the other person with me. It's not going to be easy, and we know it's not easy. We
Yeah.
know it's not easy. But Jesus is also not worried about being easy or not easy. He's worried about us growing.
Yeah.
Worried about us moving forward with life, with our perception of life, with us getting rid of all this, whatever bad feelings or bad sentiments that we have, bad emotions that we have inside of ourselves.
All
He
this
has
weight. Yeah.
all
This
this weight, removing.
moral weight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, another thing that I find very interesting here is, and then I'll go now to what Kardec says, because I find it very interesting the way he points it out. And I'm going to go, and he says, I'm going to read a passage here, where he says in item number 6 of these two items that I was
Mm-hmm.
saying, he says, right at the beginning, he talks about forgiveness and pardoning the offenses and so on. And then he says, um, if we don't, and that's when he brings this idea that we're talking not only to ourselves, not only to within, but to without, to other people, like a,
Mm-hmm.
a real adversary or a person that's, and he says, when Jesus says, do it quickly, Kardec takes this and do a different interpretation, which is also very powerful, very interesting. He says, okay, before something else happens, by being spiritists, we know that life doesn't end when our body dies.
Right.
So what happens if my adversary dies and I'm still alive, quote unquote?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he takes this, his point of view in his interpretation, which is also very sane to all of us, very, very sane. And he says, if the person is on the other side and you thought that when the person died everything went away, be careful,
Yeah. Yes.
because the poison, and then he says, right, he says this is a false proverb. When the proverb says, and he quotes, the poison dies with the beast,
It does.
and it doesn't. Exactly, it doesn't. And Kardec is so
Subtle.
subtle. Yeah, exactly. He says, okay, um the person that you're adversary with, the person died, right? Now it is easier, depending on how bad the situation is, for him to come back, or for her to come back after you and
Mm-hmm.
attach to you and make you suffer more without even knowing that the other person is doing something to you.
And you might become an obsessor, for
Might
example,
become an obsessor, exactly.
depending on the situation.
Yeah. And you know what I like to think about this? I
Mm.
like to think the other way around, because we tend to believe, and it's our a problem that I have tried to get rid of it, but it's hard sometimes. Is when I read this, I read and thinking, okay, I'm here, I'm the good guy. The person that's my adversary is the bad guy, and the bad guy died. But actually, what happens if I die first?
Yeah.
Am I going to be the bad guy that's going to be like obsessing the other person?
Yeah.
So I have to be careful, even with this thought, of actually thinking about myself, because we tend to believe that we are correct and that the other person is the person that's making it difficult for me. Is it
Mhm.
really? I'm not here to judge. I don't know the situations between anybody. I know my situations, and sometimes I think that I am being the correct one, and then time passes. I look back and say, "Oh my God, how terrible was I when I was doing that?"
I wasn't right. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wasn't right. And then what can I do now after so many years?
Yeah. One thing I think of course, as spiritists, we understand what it takes to get it done after one of them dies or the other person dies. But even for those for the materialistic paradigm where there's no life after death, even for those who think that way. So you carry this thing that you need to pardon somebody, and I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do next month, I'll do next month, and the person dies. So for this person, I'm taking as an example, there is no life after death. So it becomes absolutely traumatic for these people because of remorse. They didn't have time, they didn't do it, and now they're from their perspective, they will never be able to do it again. So even for those who do not believe the way we do, even for the materialistic paradigm, it's still as bad as it is for us
It is
because it can
indeed.
be traumatic.
It is, and it's a trauma anyway. I bet you know some cases like this, and I mean, one or two at least. I know some that people like regret not having talked to this or that person, or having left things like unfinished.
Mhm.
Maybe we have something like that we want to do it, and we are postponing it and leaving it for later. But maybe it's the time is now to think about it and say, um, why not? Why not give it another try? And it doesn't, you like maybe one of the bad things about the way we think sometimes is, we think that, oh, we need to be friends with the person and live with the person. I mean, our lives are our lives. I'm not going to live with some, I mean, Louise is in Florida, I'm here in Massachusetts. you know uh, If we were like the best friends of all, we could not be together because we just have our own lives. I mean,
Yeah.
we can meet like here and there, and with the
Mhm.
same thing with the person that I had problems in the past. So I mean, reconciling with the person doesn't mean that I need to walk with the person all day long, every single day. No, I'm still gonna have my life. The other person will still gonna have your life. But like Luis said before, it's a little weight that I take from my shoulders, because now I feel a little more free. I feel a little more um, able to smile, let's say, without that bad thought in the back that, oh, I have that thing that I didn't solve with my friend, with my brother, with my sister, with my father, whoever it is. It doesn't really matter. What
Yeah.
matters is, are we really like breathing a better air without that dampness of the remorse, like Luis said. And maybe that's what Jesus is inviting us. I wouldn't say maybe, it is what
It
Jesus is
is.
inviting us
Mm.
for, right? Is to breathe a cleaner air, an air of that's cleaning. It's not going to clean all of a sudden. No, it doesn't happen like from day to night. It
It's not
will.
a snap of fingers.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like this. It is a process. But if we don't take the step, if we don't move towards it, it will stay the same way, because it will not change. I need to grow. The other person needs to grow. Of course, that to make a war, two are needed, and to solve a problem, two are needed. I mean, I cannot solve the problem if the other person doesn't want to solve the problem. However, I can do my part. And when the other person wants to do it, at least I'm a little bit forward, and we can maybe solve it a little faster. But
Yeah.
if I'm not doing it and the other person doesn't want to do it, nothing will change. So I am the Christian. We are spiritists. So we are the ones, if we have the conscience, that need to take the step. Are we
Yeah.
going to do it or
Let's
not?
just do hands on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can go as far as saying, if you don't want any enemies, reconcile with them.
Yeah,
The minute you do, they're no longer enemies, period.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, but real reconciliation, not
Yeah.
something superficial, the real thing.
Yeah.
So
That's
they, they'll, this label of enemy is going to disappear from our hearts, not from their face, from
mm,
our hearts, because the label is not on their face; it's in our hearts.
it's within ourselves. So
It's
we have
within.
to
Yeah.
fix it. Yeah, to fix it within. And Kardec finishes when he says, and he says, as soon as possible. When Jesus says quickly, right?
Mhm.
It's because the freer we are sooner, the better for us and the better
Yeah.
for the other two. So we can like you said, like I said, breathe a little better, and just be a little more free of all these harsh feelings that destroy and go eating ourselves from the inside. And we don't we eh, like you said it right at the beginning, we are like undermining ourselves and being hard to walk, because the path that we chose is really full of holes and full of
Yeah.
quicksand, where you cannot walk as fast or cannot walk as pleasantly as we
And
should be.
sometimes we cannot walk at all, depending on
That's
what
true.
it is. We just get stuck 20 years in the past, 40 years in the past, sometimes from a previous lifetime without, conscious, being conscious about it. But yeah, it's we just get stuck and we don't know why sometimes.
That's true. I'm going to finish with, I think we're getting close to the end here.
Mhm.
My dad once told me this personal story that happened to him, and I kind of like this story. It's a very simple one. He said that one day he was going somewhere, one of his trips to a seminar, to a whatever, and then he picked up the plane, and all of a sudden he sits down, and when he sits down, the person comes, sits down by him, and then he looks at the person looks at him, and they recognize each other.
Mm.
And he looks at the person and said, "I know you." And then the person says, "Yeah, I think I know you too." And they start talking about it.
Mhm.
And then they were colleagues or friends in school. it was just like one of these chance meetings, right? Call
Yeah.
it coincidence, right?
Yes.
And so they started talking a little bit about it, and he said, "Oh, it was such a long time ago. Why did we stop talking?" And he says, "I know that we had a fight for some reason. I guess the other guy said, or he said, I can't remember the details, but they said, what was it about?" And said, "I don't know, have no idea. I know that we had something." And the other person says, "Yeah, I don't know either." So we stopped talking for 30 years, 40 years, whatever the time is. And then now we meet and we don't know why we stopped talking to each other. So it's the same. It's this idea. I mean,
Same thing.
we do stuff when we are younger, and we take uh, steps to destroy some of our relationships, and later on, these things are nothing because we can't even remember what happened. But
Yeah.
just because we kept the feeling, we were never able to go back and reconnect. And then all of a sudden, in this specific case, I don't even know if they're still friends today. I don't know what happened after that. But this tale tells me that it is worth it. It is really worth it. Like leaving stuff behind and let's go reconcile with ourselves, our worst enemies, but also with everybody that we have problems with before the judge comes and charges us quarter of a penny.
And the judge is not easy.
That's true.
Okay, beautiful, Mackenzie. Thank you so much for all the insights and all the like gathering information and picking up the pieces and parts of the gospel, because that's the beauty of spiritism. It shows us that you can't just read as a like a magazine or something. Everything that you read is actually for reflection, study. We have I don't know, a 20 word phrase in the gospel that might be a 3 hour talk, and that's exactly what we do here by calling it Spiritism a closer look. So I think it was a beautiful closer look on reconciliation, and thank you so much. And we need to continue this. We will be together many more times, I'm sure.
We will, we will. Thank you, Louise, for inviting me, and thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. So we will be here next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Spiritism a closer look, Kardec Radio. Be well.